Fighters wouldn't turn down $30 million. They just wouldn't do that.
My goals are completely different from everyone else's. At least, that's what people assumed after his official signing. But now there's been talk of internal chaos, relationships falling apart, and doors slamming shut. Something has completely broken down behind the scenes. So what's really going down with Jon Jones in the PFL? As Dana White's worst nightmare of a promotion makes yet another aggressive play.
Fighting just to continue fighting doesn't make sense to me anymore. If I can earn money outside of punching people, to challenge myself in that way means more to me now than to fight again.
Let me break this down for you. Jon Jones stepped away from the UFC back in June 2025, giving up the heavyweight championship and walking away from a legacy that puts him in a conversation most fighters will never even get close to. We're looking at 28 victories, just 1 defeat, 1 no contest, and a track record that spans complete dominance across 2 different divisions. The fighter everyone calls Bones seemed to have wrapped up his chapter in the fight game for good. And honestly, the entire MMA community thought that was it. But if you know anything about Jon Jones, you know he's never stayed out of the spotlight for long, and what unfolded after that is completely insane.
Are you going to be fighting at the White House?
That is my goal.
That is your goal?
That is my goal. It's been my goal for a very long time. But
just weeks after that retirement statement, Jones started doing what he does better than anyone else, which is keeping the entire world on edge and guessing what comes next. The second president, Donald Trump, hinted at this massive UFC showcase happening at the White House. Something completely changed in Jones. He said the announcement really tickled his pickle, and that's quite the reaction from someone who supposedly wanted absolutely nothing more to do with stepping into that cage. Come early July 2025, Jones had already jumped back into the UFC's anti-doping testing program, which is a required move for any fighter planning to compete again. His retirement lasted roughly 3 weeks before Jones was already scheming his comeback, and that timeline is just completely bonkers when you really think about it.
Francis Ngannou is a bad guy. He's not a good guy. He plays the whole, I don't understand the language, and he tries to come off like
he's... While Jones was playing this whole will he or won't he dance with the UFC, another organization had been keeping a very close eye on the situation. The Professional Fighters League, which most people know as PFL, has constructed their entire brand around being the real alternative to Dana White's empire. Started by venture capitalist Don Davis back in 2018, PFL rose from what used to be the World Series of Fighting with a straightforward message that connected with fighters who felt completely undervalued, better compensation, more autonomy, and the freedom to chase different opportunities. Davis recognized what he described as an underserved worldwide market of more than 650 million MMA fans, and he was absolutely committed to capitalizing on it. The data shows PFL's growth in ways that are genuinely remarkable. They bought Bellator MMA in 2023, bringing in serious roster depth while eliminating their biggest competition in a single move. Saudi Arabia's SRJ Sports Investments purchased a minority ownership stake that same year, and by 2025, PFL's worth had climbed to roughly $1 billion, which is completely staggering. They launched regional divisions throughout Europe, the Middle East, North Africa, and Africa, with Asia, Australia, and Latin America coming next. Instead of the UFC's promoter-controlled matchmaking system, PFL operates on a seasonal tournament format with million-dollar prizes for champions, highlighting what they describe as a merit-based advancement system. This wasn't just some regional organization trying to survive. This was a strategic attack on the UFC's dominance, and nothing demonstrated PFL's ambitions like their talent recruitment strategy, which critics describe as poaching while PFL calls it providing opportunities. Don Davis has been surprisingly direct about this approach. He stated openly that they compensate fighters better and that in PFL, fighters maintain control instead of being under someone else's control. Those are direct challenges, and Dana White has taken every single one of them as a personal attack. White has described PFL as financially struggling and predicted a massive talent exodus back to the UFC. The crown achievement of PFL's recruitment campaign has to be Francis Ngannou. The man departed UFC in January 2023, relinquishing his title because he and Dana White couldn't reach agreement on anything. Ngannou demanded higher compensation and health insurance for all fighters in negotiation. White would later admit that nothing brought him more satisfaction than sending that guy over to PFL, which shows you exactly how that relationship deteriorated and just how much animosity developed between them.
There's no barrier with this guy.
According to White, Francis violently over a bonus.
And he was pissed off that he didn't get a $50,000 bonus. Francis, you didn't get it because this, that. And he's in my office and he's arguing with me. The conversation's over. I'm starting to leave. And he grabs me by my shirt and like pushes me back in my office. And I said, dude.
The language barrier definitely makes communication even more difficult than it already is. You know what I mean? Ngannou inked this massive contract with PFL back in May 2023, celebrated as their biggest signing in history, and they really went all out with this deal. The agreement included company equity, leadership positions like chairman of PFL Africa, and total freedom to pursue boxing matches. He went on to challenge Tyson Fury in October 2023, delivering a surprisingly competitive performance that stunned the boxing community and proved he could compete with elite-level boxers. Then came the Anthony Joshua fight in March 2024, a knockout loss that still earned Ngannou approximately $30 million combined from both boxing contests, which is absolutely incredible money. For MMA, he competed once under the PFL banner, knocking out Renan Ferreira in the opening round during October 2024. To capture the Superfights Heavyweight Championship, PFL had secured their marquee attraction, though critics pointed out the minimal MMA activity for such a massive investment. So how does Jon Jones factor into this entire situation? Don Davis has been completely transparent about wanting the greatest fighter of all time fighting under his organization, specifically to face Ngannou. Back in March 2025, Davis publicly presented Jones with $50 million to battle Ngannou, which represents the type of money that gets even the biggest names to pay serious attention. He posted about knowing exactly how Jon Jones could earn $50 million, and that would involve fighting Francis Ngannou to determine the legitimate heavyweight champion and the actual pound-for-pound #1 fighter. Davis described it as the fight of the decade for MMA enthusiasts, and honestly, that assessment was completely accurate. By June 2025, PFL escalated their proposal with a winner-takes-everything offer supported by Riyadh season financing. If Ngannou wins, PFL and Francis divide 100% of the revenue. If Jones wins, UFC and Jones split 100%. It was a publicity-generating move designed to make Dana White appear like he was avoiding the biggest heavyweight fight in history. Davis even suggested that White and Jones were frightened to face Ngannou before his PFL debut, adding fuel to an already explosive situation. The Jones vs. Ngannou drama has been developing since 2020, when Jones gave up his light heavyweight championship specifically to advance and compete for heavyweight gold. Both fighters were UFC heavyweights during the same time periods, and fans were desperately wanting this matchup to happen. Ngannou captured the UFC heavyweight title in March 2021 by destroying Stipe Miocic in brutal fashion. Jones was supposedly the next challenger, except that never materialized because money became the obstacle. Jones reportedly requested what he described as Deontay Wilder-level money, somewhere in the range of $10 to $30 million. UFC declined. Ngannou's coach Eric Nixick claimed Francis rejected $8 million because the compensation would decrease dramatically if he lost the belt. Dana White blamed both fighters, but later indicated Jones wasn't the problem. Ngannou disputed this, calling the UFC's proposal misleading as he approached free agency. Everyone pointed fingers at everyone else while fans watched this dream fight disappear. Ngannou defended his championship once against Cyril Gane in January 2022. Winning a unification bout despite competing with a torn ACL and damaged MCL, which is absolutely incredible considering the pain he must have endured. Then he remained inactive for over a year due to knee surgery and contract disagreements, before departing as champion. Jones made his heavyweight debut in March 2023 by submitting Gane for the vacant title. Fans criticized it as avoiding prime Ngannou, and they had a point. The greatest fighter ever captured a belt that was vacated by a champion he never fought. So this is where things get really interesting. In December 2025, Ngannou disclosed on the Ariel Helwani show that his PFL contract expires very soon. Before June, he directly mentioned Jones as his ideal MMA opponent, with Deontay Wilder as his boxing target. When questioned about fighting Jones at the White House, Ngannou responded positively, saying if that could happen, that could happen. There's a possibility anything can happen. He called it the biggest fight of all time, stating that the biggest fight of all time can only happen between Jon Jones and Francis Ngannou. Jones has matched this excitement completely. When Ngannou's coach mentioned Francis remained interested in a UFC return, Jones replied by saying, "Now we're talking. That's a legitimate super fight. a collision of champions, not just promotional hype. He prioritized Ngannou over Tom Aspinall and Alex Pereira for legacy purposes. Both fighters want this collision. PFL wants this collision. The fans want this collision. There's only one person blocking this from happening, and his name sounds like Dana White. What Jon Jones has been up to since stepping away, and the drama that followed him into retirement since leaving the UFC in June 2025. Jon Jones has been everything except inactive, and this guy has literally been everywhere you look. The fighter who controlled 2 divisions for more than 10 years has jumped into business opportunities, coaching upcoming talent, and keeping an incredibly active social media presence that keeps him in every conversation, even without entering that octagon. If retirement is supposed to mean disappearing from public view, somebody clearly forgot to inform Jon Jones. Within days of announcing his retirement, Jones unveiled a new business partnership that didn't surprise anyone who understands his brand development skills. He announced partial ownership and the position of Chief Performance Officer at Ketone IQ, a ketone ester beverage brand created for energy and concentration. Jones explained that it has performed great in competition, but he wants his real legacy to be how he handles business, adding that people should try it because this product is amazing. It's a typical athlete transition, turning health and fitness credibility into profit, while creating lasting revenue sources that don't require getting hit in the face, which honestly makes complete sense. Earlier in 2025, Jones became part owner of the Dirty Boxing Championship promotion, establishing himself on the business side of combat sports. Post-retirement estimates suggest he's been concentrating on real estate through companies like Jones Street Investment Partners, maintaining cryptocurrency investments and exploring possibilities in podcasting and coaching. The man is constructing an empire beyond fighting, diversifying income sources while his reputation still holds maximum worth. His coaching work has been especially noteworthy. Jones has shown interest in Olympic wrestler Gable Steveson, making confident predictions about the young heavyweight's future after Stevenson's recent success. He declared that Steveson will become the most elite heavyweight on the planet within 12 months, which is a major endorsement from someone who understands heavyweight excellence personally. This type of mentorship accomplishes multiple goals. It keeps Jones connected to MMA discussions, establishes him as a respected veteran of the sport, and potentially gives him involvement in future champions he can take credit for developing. On social platforms, Jones has been both relentless and calculated. His posts on X and Instagram have received praise from analysts like Chael Sonnen, who described it as some of Jones's best work for creating anticipation around his potential return. He's gotten into disputes with former opponent Daniel Cormier about a charity grappling trilogy that would resolve their decade-long rivalry permanently. He shared inspirational content, posted mysterious messages about his future intentions, and commented on developments throughout the MMA and boxing worlds, including Jake Paul's continued success in combat sport. He visited Chechnya during this time, adding to the international reputation he's built over the years. Every post keeps him making headlines, without needing to actually fight anybody. But Jones wouldn't be Jones without controversy chasing him everywhere he goes. Just days before his retirement became official, legal issues surfaced that reminded everyone about his problematic history outside competition. The timing couldn't have been more questionable or suspicious, depending on your perspective. On June 17, 2025, charges were filed in Albuquerque, New Mexico, related to a February 24, 2025 single-vehicle accident. Police arriving at the scene discovered a heavily intoxicated woman partially undressed from the waist down in the passenger seat. She alleged Jones was driving, that they had consumed alcohol and mushrooms at his residence earlier that night, and that he escaped on foot after the crash. A misdemeanor charge for fleeing the scene of an accident was filed, with an additional telephone harassment charge briefly added based on alleged threatening phone call. Body cam footage released in June 2025 showed approximately 20 minutes of the incident, including phone conversations where Jones allegedly made threats or references to violence. The footage circulated on social media instantly, reigniting arguments about Jones's character that have followed him throughout his entire career. The timing sparked speculation that he was retiring from fighting to avoid public scrutiny rather than for any honorable reasons about legacy or health. Jones posted on social media that people shouldn't believe everything they see online. His lawyer described the situation as targeting and unbelievable, claiming the woman invented her story to avoid her own DWI charges, and that Jones wasn't actually operating the vehicle. By September and October 2025, all charges were dropped following investigation, but the damage to his public image was already done. This incident reminded people of his 2015 hit-and-run felony, where he fled the scene of a crash involving a pregnant woman, returned to retrieve cash and drugs from the car, then fled again. That case resulted in probation and community service. The pattern of problems outside the octagon has shaped Jones's career as much as his cage dominance. Fans and media described the timing of the 2025 incident as suspicious, with many believing his retirement was driven by avoiding these legal problems, rather than any genuine desire to step away from competition. Since the charges were dismissed, no new incidents have been reported. Jones has maintained his focus on the White House comeback campaign, his business projects, and staying relevant in MMA conversations. He's described his current mindset as being a man on a mission, patient but determined to end his career on his own terms at the biggest possible stage. The contradiction in Jones's situation is incredible when you examine the complete picture. This is a fighter universally considered the greatest of all time, with every physical advantage you could want, and fighting intelligence that seems almost superhuman, repeatedly damaging his own legacy through choices made outside the cage. Every time he gets close to pure greatness, something drags him back into controversy, and yet he keeps returning, he keeps finding ways to stay relevant, to create headlines, and make people invested in what happens next. His talent for remaining the focus of attention, even during retirement, might be his most remarkable ability. Meanwhile, PFL CEO Peter Murray confirmed plans for something very special for Ngannou's final fight in early 2026, possibly against new champion Vadim Nemkov, who challenged Ngannou after capturing the PFL title. Ngannou accepted Nemkov's challenge on social media, indicating he may complete his PFL contract before exploring free agency. Whether that free agency leads back to UFC for the White House event depends entirely on whether Dana White's hatred for Ngannou can be overcome by the promise of the biggest payday in MMA history. As of December 15, 2025, Jones remains technically retired, but clearly not finished. He's in the testing program, he's training, and he's campaigning for a spot on the biggest card in UFC history. PFL has made their proposals and been rejected. Dana White remains doubtful about Jones and openly hostile toward Ngannou, but has kept the door slightly open for the former, while completely closing it on the latter. Francis Ngannou is about to become a free agent, with options. All the components for the biggest heavyweight fight in MMA history exist at the same time. Whether they actually come together depends on egos, money, grudges, and the willingness of powerful people to put aside their personal conflicts for the sake of giving fans what they've wanted for 5 years. The greatest fighter of all time isn't finished making history. The only question is where that history gets written and who gets to benefit from it. That's everything for now, folks, and this is where we wrap things up. For more content like this, be sure to check out the next video. The UFC White House showdown and the bitter rivalries that could destroy everything. 2026 is marked on every MMA fan's calendar, and for excellent reason. The UFC is planning to stage an event on the South Lawn of the White House, marking the first professional sporting event ever held on those grounds. This isn't some wild fantasy, it's actually going to happen, and the scope of this event is absolutely incredible. President Donald Trump first mentioned the concept in July 2025 during a rally, suggesting a UFC card with 20,000 to 25,000 attendees, which would be enormous. Dana White confirmed plans in August 2025, after White House meetings, describing it as historic. Trump later specified the date as June 14th, which happens to be Flag Day, and his 80th birthday, moving from an initial July 4th target due to logistics and security requirements. The logistics are genuinely crazy. A temporary arena holding 5,000 to 6,000 seats will be built in front of the White House, with massive screens on the ellipse for up to 100,000 additional viewers. Events are planned at the Lincoln Memorial Steps. Fighter warm-ups may happen inside the actual White House, which is just incredible to imagine. There will be fireworks, light shows, and fan activities throughout the entire National Mall as part of America's tour. Dana White has promised what he describes as the most incredible card of all time, or the greatest lineup ever, with Trump suggesting 8 to 9 championship fights, which would be unprecedented since no UFC card has ever featured more than 3 title bouts. The event will stream exclusively on Paramount Plus as part of UFC's new broadcasting agreement, with some preliminary fights potentially showing on CBS. No pay-per-view, no public ticket sales, strictly invitation only with complimentary admission. This is designed to be a patriotic spectacle, and White has been saving big fights specifically for this card. Matchmaking discussions begin in February or March 20. Now the fight that everyone wants to see headline this historic event is Jones versus Ngannou. The timing seems almost too perfect. Ngannou's PFL contract expires before the event, making him a free agent exactly when this card needs its biggest attraction. Jones has been campaigning for a spot since July. Both fighters have publicly expressed their interest in facing each other at this specific venue. Ngannou told TMZ that it would be the most exciting fight that the UFC could organize. Jones described himself as getting in shape, lean and completely ready to jump into a training camp, adding that life is good, and he's healing, getting stronger so he can finish his final chapter, like a real champion. Jones has been remarkably flexible about the term. In November 2025, he stated he's absolutely willing to do something he hasn't done in 15 years, which is fighting in a non-title or non-main event position, just to secure a spot on the card. He said he wants to face whoever is holding the belt at heavyweight. He's released political-style promotional videos, presenting it as his redemption and final chapter ending. He described himself as the hunter, rather than the hunted for once, expressing disappointment at being overlooked, but remaining patient and focused. Joe Rogan has publicly advocated for Jones to be included, calling his exclusion a tragedy. Eric Trump has supported Jones publicly as well, but this is where the dream crashes into reality. Dana White doesn't want Francis Ngannou anywhere near his promotion ever again. When asked about Ngannou returning for the White House card, White's response was crystal clear. He said he doesn't know how he can make it any clearer that there was nothing that made him happier than sending that guy to PFL, and that he doesn't want to be in business with people he doesn't like, and that he doesn't think are good people. That's about as definitive a rejection as you can get in professional sports. To understand why White feels this way, you have to understand how both Jones and Ngannou's UFC careers concluded. Neither departure was clean and both left wounds that haven't healed. Jon Jones's MMA career represents arguably the greatest in the sport's history. He started in UFC in 2008 and became the youngest champion ever at age 23 by defeating Mauricio. He defended the light heavyweight title a record 8 consecutive times against legends like Rashad Evans, Lyoto Machida, Alexander Gustafsson twice, and Daniel Cormier. His fighting style combined elite wrestling, creative striking with oblique kicks and spinning elbows and submission skills that made him nearly impossible to beat. Then came the controversies, PE violations in 2016 and 2017, a hit-and-run felony in 2015, and domestic battery charges twice. He was stripped of the title 3 times due to disciplinary problems. Jones retired in June 2025 after prolonged drama surrounding a unification bout with interim champion Tom Aspinall. White had announced that Jones agreed to fight Aspinall, claiming they had a deal, then Jones backed out. White stated that he had an agreement to fight Tom Aspinall, and then Jones said he wasn't going to do it, making White unable to count on him for major events. Jones spent months publicly dismissing Aspinall, leading to accusations of avoiding a legitimate contender. White promoted Aspinall to undisputed champion after Jones vacated. Jones eventually apologized publicly for mishandling the situation and expressed a desire to meet with White personally to make amends. White accepted the apology, stating that Jones doesn't need to apologize to him for anything, and that even through all the difficult times they've experienced, he still considers Jon Jones the greatest of all time. But White also gave 1,000,000-to-1 odds on Jones appearing at the White House, citing the broken Aspinall agreement as evidence of unreliability. Francis Ngannou's career took a different route. He holds a record of 18 wins and 3 losses, with 12 knockouts demonstrating his devastating power. He started in UFC in 2015 with victories but experienced setbacks, including losses to Stipe Miocic and Derek Lewis. He bounced back with a 4-fight knockout streak, culminating in knocking out Miocic. He defended once against Cyril Gane in January 2022, winning the unification bout while fighting with a torn ACL and damaged MCL. Ngannou's departure was far messier than Jones's. He left as reigning champion in January 2023 after contract negotiations collapsed completely. White accused Ngannou of grabbing him and Chief Business Officer Hunter Campbell by their shirts during disputes. According to White, Ngannou put his hand on his chest and said they weren't finished talking yet, to which White responded that they were done talking. White claims Ngannou turned down becoming the highest-paid heavyweight in UFC history and feared facing Jones, calling Ngannou not a good person. Ngannou has been evasive but regretful about how things end. In a 2025 interview, he said it was quite disappointing the way things went, and that they shouldn't have gone that way. He suggested cameras could verify what actually happened during those confrontations, and expressed frustration at constantly defending himself against White's claim. The relationship is completely broken, so the current situation is this. White and Jones have a tense but improving relationship, with White reaffirming Jones as the greatest, while remaining skeptical about his dependability. White and Ngannou have no relationship whatsoever, with White actively opposed to any scenario involving Ngannou's return. The dream fight exists in a reality where Dana White doesn't exist, which unfortunately isn't the reality we're living in.